Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Great to have everybody here. We have a lot in store for you tonight. Donald Trump, big blow up in the Oval Office again, talking about what he calls a white genocide in Africa. And that's not sitting well with a lot of people. I would say what we're dealing with here is possibly another case of a manufactured reality. We'll update you on what's going on with the Ostrich farm out in British Columbia and the controversies surrounding their research. A statement has been released by the farm owners in the wake of a lot of information that has been released. And yes, also some incorrect information that has been circulating. And we'll show you what's going on with the RCMP and also protesters, where there is ongoing division. So we'll talk about that tonight as well. And crickets. Ostriches, crickets, and government cash. All that and a whole lot more coming up right here on the Maverick News Channel. Stay with me.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are Maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, first up tonight, though, before we get into all this ostrich stuff and this big blow up in the Oval Office, Prime Minister Mark Carney is outlining his government's priorities. And I know a lot of people are wishing for, asking for, demanding a budget, a full budget. But we have this tonight. Let me get this queued up here. We're going to go now to Parliament Hill. In just one moment. Okay, here we go. Mark Carney outlining his new government's priorities.
Our first cabinet planning forum at Wilson House at Meech Lake. And while we were there, as a team, we sat down and we discussed how we can best deliver the major changes that are needed to overcome the many challenges that Canada currently faces. In a more dangerous and divided world, geopolitical risks are rising, threatening our sovereignty. The global trading system, which has helped power Canada's prosperity for decades, is undergoing its biggest transformation since the fall of the Berlin Wall. At home, our long-standing weak productivity is making life less affordable for Canadian families. It's straining government finances and threatening to undermine the sustainability of vital social programs on which Canadians rely. So Canada's new government has an immense responsibility to address these challenges head-on, with focus new strategies, and determined execution. And that new approach animates the mandate letter that I shared with all members of our ministry at the end of our meeting. It reflects a unified mission. This one letter outlines the core priorities of Canada's new government, reflecting the mandate that Canadians have given to us. In particular, the government is charged to build the strongest economy in the G7, an economy that works for everyone. We're to bring down the cost of living for Canadian families, to keep our country secure and our communities safe, to develop a new economic and security relationship with the United States, and to build new partnerships with reliable allies around the world. Our team is already acting on this mandate with urgency and determination. This past weekend, I met with U.S. Vice President Vance in Rome, where I reiterated what workers and businesses on both sides of the border have long known, that Canada and the United States are stronger when we work together. Minister LeBlanc is currently in Washington to continue negotiations with members of President Trump's cabinet. And Minister Champagne is meeting with his American counterpart as the minister leads the G7 finance ministers meeting in Banff. Notre nouvelle équipe de ministres a été bâtie pour ce moment charnière, pour apporter les changements que les Canadiens et Canadiennes méritent. Bâtie pour permettre une vraie gouvernance cabinet, de faire preuve de leadership, d'apporter de nouvelles idées et d'agir avec détermination. The next few weeks and months will be crucial to catalyze the changes that Canadians deserve. This next Tuesday, May 27th, in the speech from the throne, His Majesty King Charles III will outline our government's plan to build Canada strong. On June 2nd, I will chair a major First Ministers meeting in Saskatoon to strengthen the partnerships that are needed to build one Canadian economy out of 13 and to catalyze the significant nation-building projects that will diversify and strengthen our economy. In the middle of June, I will host the G7 and other world leaders in Alberta to address global challenges ranging from energy security to the future of the new global commercial trading system. By Canada Day, our government intends to take action to eliminate all remaining federal barriers to internal trade. This fall, the Minister of Finance will deliver Budget 2025, a budget based on a clear fiscal outlook shaped by a higher degree of confidence in the prospective efficiencies and cost savings across government, greater clarity on the economic impacts of the trade war, and the commitments on new defence investments necessary to secure Canadian sovereignty and to meet our responsibilities to our allies, as will be agreed at the upcoming NATO summit towards the end of June. This budget will be guided by a new fiscal discipline, spending less on government operations so that Canadians can invest more to build a stronger economy. Government must become more productive by deploying AI at scale, by focusing on results over spending, and by using scarce tax dollars to catalyze multiples of private investment. As our workers are continuing to face unjustified tariffs imposed by the United States, my government is fighting to get the best deal for Canada. We will take all the time necessary, but not more, to do so. And in parallel, we are strengthening our relationships with reliable trading partners and allies. Canada has what the world needs and the values the world respects. Pour renforcer nos liens avec des partenaires et alliés autour du globe, j'ai multiplié les appels et les rencontres. La fin de semaine dernière à Rome, je me suis entretenu avec plusieurs leaders internationaux, notamment avec le Premier ministre italien, Mme Meloni, le chancelier allemand, M. Merz, et la présidente de la Commission européenne, Mme von der Leyen. Dans les semaines et les mois à venir, je saisirai toutes les occasions d'échanger avec les leaders du monde entier afin de créer de nouvelles opportunités pour les travailleurs et les entreprises canadiennes. Avant tout, nous allons renforcer notre propre économie, une économie qui crée des emplois, qui augmente les salaires et qui est résiliente face au choc. Nous allons bâtir une seule économie canadienne au lieu de 13. Nous allons identifier et accélérer la réalisation de projets d'intérêt national qui vont relier et transformer notre pays. We will always be guided by our conviction that our economy is only strong when it serves everyone. That means bringing down costs for Canadians and helping them to get ahead. We will put more money in Canadians' pockets with a middle-class tax cut that will take effect by Canada Day, saving two-income families up to $840 a year. We will unleash the power of public-private cooperation, catalyze the housing industry, and create hundreds of thousands of new careers in the skilled trades by building homes faster, at lower costs, and with smaller environmental footprint in construction and greater efficiency once families move in. Nous allons assurer la sécurité du Canada en tant que nation souveraine et celle des Canadiens et Canadiennes au sein de leur communauté. Avec des forces armées canadiennes, des forces policières, une frontière et un code criminel plus fort. Nous allons bâtir la confiance en notre système d'immigration, ramener les cibles à des niveaux viables et plafonner le nombre de travailleurs d'étudiants étrangers, tout en attirant des travailleurs talentueux qui nous aideront à bâtir une économie forte. In the mandate letter released today to Canada's ministry, I encourage my colleagues that we can more than meet our challenges with energy and ambition. That is how Canadians have built the best country in the world, and that is how we will build it even better. It's time to build big, build bold, build now. Merci, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We're now going to begin with the questions here. Nous allons commencer avec la période de questions. First question, Gabrielle.
CTV News, thank you for taking our questions. The American ambassador told CTV's Power Play today that pulling out of the F-35 deal would threaten NORAD. Do you agree, and do you have an update on the F-35 plans?
The second part of your question, the review of the F-35 contract is ongoing. There's many factors that come into that. Interoperability, so that would relate to the NORAD element there. Value for money, broader Canadian industrial impacts, all of those are factors that are under consideration. So it's, I didn't see the ambassador's specific comments, but those are factors that are part of an ongoing review of the contract.
The ambassador also said that there haven't been formal talks on the Golden Dome. Should Canada take part in that project, and how much would you be willing to spend on that?
Okay, well, I'm not going to put a price tag on the second part of your question. I think I'll say the following about the situation with air defense or ballistic missile defense, intercontinental ballistic missile defense, broader defense against, including potential missiles that in the not too distant future could come from space. I mean, these are some of the threats that our nation faces. We take those threats seriously. We take our responsibilities as a government seriously, as I just said. It's one of the reasons why we made the commitment back in March for the over-the-horizon radar, the first phase of the over-horizon radar system, and that was an independent decision that we took. We are conscious that we have an ability, if we so choose, to complete the Golden Dome with investments and partnership. And it's something that we are looking at and something that has been discussed at a high level, but I'm not sure one negotiates on this. These are military decisions that are then taken in that context. And we will evaluate it accordingly. Thank you.
Next question.
Ronnie McKenzie Gray with Global News. During the election, you were very public in saying that the old relationship that Canada has with the U.S. is over. You said that Donald Trump is trying to break us so he can own us. But now, just a couple weeks after the election, there's conversations, at least, about further integrating the Canadian military with the U.S. about the Golden Dome. What do you say to Canadians who voted for you based on your elbows and mentality with the Americans? Well,
first, one of the reasons why we're having more constructive discussions with the Americans is because we are demonstrating our ability that we have choices. We have choices economically. We have choices with respect to our defense. I'll give you several examples to back that up. Maybe I'll step away from the economics. Mr. Gray, you've probably heard enough of me on that, so I will talk about defense for a moment. With respect to the F-35, it was raised a moment ago, we have alternatives for the F-35 for the back end of that. European alternatives that we could pursue. We have to weigh them in the best interests of Canada. That's how we will evaluate it. With respect to broader defense, whether it's air, sea, land, cyber, we have other partnerships that we can strike. And one of the things, as you will have heard, but I'll repeat, that we have been discussing with our European partners is becoming a full partner of Rearm Europe, Safe Europe, different acronyms for a major relationship that we can have that gives us diversification, new partners, new options, better value for money, potentially more domestic Canadian economic benefits. So all of that exists in parallel to potential opportunities with the U.S. And the way I would characterize the change in the relationship, and I stood in this room and made those comments the first time, and I'm very clear, and I absolutely repeat them today, which is we had for almost half a century, we as Canada, a relationship with the Americans which were a steady process of deepening integration. Deepening integration in economics. We went from free trade deal through to CUSMA, deepening integration in military aspects. And that process of deepening integration is over. We are in a position now where we cooperate when necessary, but not necessarily cooperate. So we have other options for that cooperation. We are pursuing those other options. You will see a very different set of partnerships, security and economic, going forward. But to be absolutely clear, when it is in Canada's interests, first best interest to cooperate with the Americans, to strike deals with the Americans, relationships, and particularly in examples like ballistic missile defense, that may be the best option, and if so, we will pursue that.
On the point of further integration, you said on Sunday in Rome, it's prudent to diversify our defense partnerships when there are questions of sovereignty at issue. Why would we even want to have conversations about further integration militarily when you said just 4 days ago that the Americans have questions of our sovereignty?
I'm trying to recall the comments to which you're referring to.
Last question to Eric at the...
when
you were talking about the...
forgive me, you can furnish me with the transcript, but there is, as we know, the President has expressed on multiple occasions a wish for, I'm not going to repeat the phrase, I never repeat the phrase, but a wish for something to happen. That is never going to happen. That is understood, increasingly understood. The wish still exists, but the reality is different. First point. Second point, there are cases where it is in our interest to be integrated with the U.S. market. The automobile sector. My entire life, our automobile sector has been integrated with the U.S. The Auto Pact was struck the year I was born. There are elements of our security relationship where it can make sense. but not all elements of our economic relationships or our security relationships. Does it make sense? And we are actively and aggressively pursuing alternatives.
Prochaine question. Radio.
Bonjour, Juliane Lapointe de Radio-Canada. J'aimerais vous entendre en français sur est-ce que vous pensez que c'est une bonne idée?
We're going to pull out of this. I think we've covered the main points from Mr. Carney tonight. Interesting comments about the Golden Dome. And I also want to address the budget issue. And well, more specifically, not so much the budget, but this issue of tariffs and the aspect of tariffs that relates to whether they even exist. Because people have been sending me links to videos with live streamers, influencers, I'll say conservative influencers primarily, who have been making videos saying that the Carney government came out, announced tariffs, and then gave corporations a secret code so that they don't have to pay them. But you do. That's been the spin. That's been the narrative. And there's a grain of truth in it, but it's not really the truth. And I'm addressing it tonight because people keep sending me this stuff. One person in particular who says that that's the truth, but it isn't really quite the truth. What they're really referring to is that they're cherry picking a little bit of information and then creating a narrative. They're putting a political spin on it to make it look like they've done, that Carney and the Liberals have done something underhanded or sneaky so that you're paying more at the grocery store and the big companies are not. And what they're really referring to is an Oxford study that took a look at the impact of Canada's tariffs, counter tariffs on the US. And this is an illustration of modern information warfare and politics in motion. The story really broke about 4 days ago, back on the 15th. And this is what they're really referring to. And it's this study from this Oxford economics study. And if it's actually not as complicated as you might think it's going to be. But what's really going on here is, yes, exemptions have been implemented after the government's tariffs were announced on U.S. goods, counter tariffs. The Canadian government then also issued a 6-month exemption on certain products, certain goods that are used in manufacturing. And so the effect of that is that the tariffs become much more targeted. In addition, according to the study from Oxford, the end result is that, yes, there's sort of a net zero impact on the Canadian economy, which shows, unlike what the political narrative is, which is that it's a scam or that it's a trick and that Carney is not really going hard on the U.S. government at all, but he's going hard on you, the taxpayer. There's an element of truth to it, but it isn't really quite true. The reason is that the tariffs are targeted. There are exemptions for products that are being used for manufacturing. The reason for that, and even like food processing, the reason is that those exemptions are directed at products that go into value-added products. It keeps Canadian industry competitive. It preserves Canadian jobs in this trade war. It makes the Canadian response in this tariff war more targeted, more strategic. It's smart because you're not just putting across the board tariffs on everything, which then hurts everyone in Canada, it's strategic. So yes, they apply the tariffs to specific kinds of products, but end use products. It affects the price of something one time at the end, at the retail point when the consumer purchases it, not at the beginning of the supply chain where it goes into the component of something. So if you're bringing in potatoes, there's an exemption, as I understand this. So there would be an exemption on potatoes if you're using the potatoes to go into potato chips or some other product where you're processing the potatoes at a factory, a food processing plant, and people are working and it's creating employment, and therefore there are economic linkages associated with that, and it keeps people working. And then the product that is produced in Canada remains price competitive in the market. So when that bag of potato chips is then shipped off to market and is placed on a shelf, it's price competitive with other similar products from other countries that might be imported into Canada, whether they're from Mexico, Europe, or the United States. And it's important that we do that. If you apply that tariff at that point and then put that into the supply chain, and then your product instantly becomes 25% more expensive, and then you end up paying that as well. Now, there could be, and I'm not sure of the exact formula, but I'm sure that there are numerical equations that come into to play here as well, so that how it applies across the supply chain is I'm sure more complex than what I'm laying out here, or even what we've seen in media reports with regard to all of this. But the point is, it is strategic, and the goal is to make sure that the Canadian economy is not harmed, or that there's minimal impact in a negative way on the Canadian economy, while we try to exert pressure on key sectors of the US economy. Orange juice, oranges from Florida, where we import a lot of those, but we can get them from other countries like Mexico or Costa Rica or some other tropical place. So there are alternatives. And then that sort of puts pressure on Florida and the state of Florida to then put pressure on the Trump administration, or whether it's Tennessee whiskey, which is being, taken off the shelves at LCBO stores in Ontario. Then that forces the manufacturer of that product to put pressure on the Trump administration to relax the tariffs. That's what it's really about. It's not as simple or as sinister as those other live streamers would have you believe. It gets clicks, and it makes people, and I get it, and you can still have the view that the government approach is not correct, or you might not like what the Liberal government or Carney is doing with respect to that. But I'm just giving you proper perspective on it, because what I've been hearing and what's been sent to me has not really been accurate. It's been political spin, and it's really, really grossly distorted. So I'm just trying to bring you real information. In addition to that, I've also been looking at information, statistics, data, graphs regarding debt to GDP ratio and credit ratings. And I can tell you as well that as we, sit today, we're actually in a better position than the United States economically when you really start to drill down into the numbers, because we now have a much better credit rating than the United States does. They just had Moody's was the last to downgrade the U.S. credit rating, so they no longer have their AAA credit rating like Canada does, and our debt to GDP ratio actually works out much better. So moving ahead, Canada has a lot more room to maneuver financially, economically, than the United States does, because they have so many obligations and such a massive budget and a huge deficit, much greater than ours. and because Trump has chosen a path of contraction instead of expansion economically, and he's pulling in instead of trying to expand the economy out, except through threats and threats of annexation and assimilation of geographic territory, Greenland, Canada, Panama, blah blah blah, and launching trade wars against allies. They're not really in a very good position vis-a-vis or compared to Canada. So you can be cautiously optimistic. Whether Mark Carney follows through and delivers the goods, only time will tell, and we'll probably get a better picture of that in the fall. But right now, it's all very volatile, as you know, and that's because of the tariffs. That's because of Trump and his ongoing habit, I guess, of picking fights, feuds, and it was on full display again today in the White House, where he had this row over these reports of white genocide that he is picking up on and embracing in South Africa. So he was meeting with the president of South Africa, and this has turned into a major international story because it's not quite like Zelensky, but man, I just see, it seems like there are echoes of that in this. This is like an ambush of some kind that we just witnessed today in the Oval Office, this time with the president of South Africa. My goodness, let's just pick up some of this. I think we're safe to pick up this clip here. We'll get into it. And I'm sure you probably over the last few years have yourself heard stories about white farmers in South Africa being attacked, murdered. And I think there's some truth to that, but perspective is important. And there are a lot of people pushing back on what you're about to witness here today, right here. A lot of people pushing back, saying that what the president is suggesting is real is not really, again, not really accurate. It's a distortion, maybe even a manufactured reality.
Genocide in South Africa.
Well, I can answer that for the president.
It's back a little.
Big progress.
South Africa, South Africa.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
No, not you. Right here. He's from South Africa. Go ahead, please.
What are you expecting on the ICJ case? Are you expecting South Africa to drop that? Is that what you're trying to raise?
On which case?
The ICJ case against Israel,
International
Criminal Court.
I don't expect anything, to be honest. I really don't. I don't know. It's they've got a case. There's a lot of anger there, tremendous anger. I don't expect anything. We'll see what happens. We'll have a ruling, and who knows what the ruling is going to mean. Yeah.
On that subject of Gaza, Mr. President, are you going to be speaking to Prime Minister Netanyahu about Israel's renewed offensive there? There's been a lot of concern from European countries. The Pope has expressed concern. Are you going to be asking Prime Minister Netanyahu to tone down the offensive in Gaza, to let more aid in?
Was that a question or a statement?
It's a question.
This guy's, you never change.
Mr. President, this side, what
Please.
will it take for you to be convinced that there's no white genocide in South Africa?
Well, I can answer that for the president. It's for him. No, seriously.
I'd rather have him answer.
Yeah, I'd rather answer. It will be.
My president will respond to you.
Yeah, let me,
Thank you, Mr. President.
it will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends, like those who are here. When we have talks between us on around a quiet table, it will take President Trump to listen to them. I'm not going to be repeating what I've been saying. I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective. That is the answer to your question.
But, Mr. President, I must say that we have, no, wait.
Here we go.
We have thousands of stories talking about it.
Sure.
And we have documentaries, we have news stories, and that. Is Natalie here, somebody here to turn that? I could show you a couple of things, and it has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would, and turn the lights down. Turn the lights down, and just put this on. It's right behind you, Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yes. South African occupy land. That's who we are. Honorable member, can withdraw my membership from this useless parliament. Yes, honorable member. Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Shoot to kill. Yamasa. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Pa, 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 pa. To kill. Yamasa. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. The mayor of DA in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man. Not because Mashaba and Soli will not be touched. They will be touched, don't worry. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness. It's shoot to kill. Yamasa. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Pa, pa, pa. Shoot to kill. Yamasa. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Pa, 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 pa.
I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm saying to you, was not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter. They freak out. It sounds like a genocidal sport.
Who will expropriate land without compensation, whether they like it or not. If they object, they can seek refuge in America.
Now this is very bad. These are burial sites right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers, and those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning. Each one of those white things you see is a cross, and there's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. And those cars aren't driving, they're stopped there to pay respects to their family member who was killed. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it. Both sides of the road you have crosses. Those people were all killed.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? No, I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen. But, okay.
I mean, it's in South Africa.
We need to find out. I don't know.
Those people.
I don't know. No.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced that it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One. Perhaps
What are you talking about?
Can we have a South African question, please? Mr. President,
the Pentagon spokesperson.
What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which was a very nice thing, they also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from me. Go ahead. Go ahead, talk about that.
Please, may we have a South African
His name is
question,
Peter
Mr.
something.
President
He's
Trump?
a terrible
If they're
reporter.
committing genocide, why invite them to the White House? I'll be quiet. Sure, that's my question now.
Let's go.
Thank you so much, President Trump. Annika Larson from ENCA in South Africa. Thank you very much for hosting us. What would you like President Ramaphosa to do about the situation we've just seen on the screen?
I don't know. Look, these are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. 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 Horrible death. Death. I don't know.
But you know that
Pick
there are
anyone.
people who are
White
dying
South
most.
Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws. And this is all. I mean, I'll give these to you. So when you say, what would I like to do? I don't know what to do. Look at this. White South African couple say that they were attacked violently.
President Trump, when will you go and see for yourself if it is?
Well, I could do that. Look, here's burial sites all over the place. These are all white farmers that are being buried.
President Trump.
And he asks about a jet that was given.
My first question is about Africa.
We're not interested in the
You are so bad. You're such a bad reporter.
If they're committing genocide, why invite them? Sir, if they are committing genocide, why invite the South Africans to the White House?
May I finish, please, President Trump? President Trump.
This is one after another. This family was wiped out. I'm just looking.
Can you get a response from President Trump? Give us your reaction to those videos, Mr.
President Trump, could you?
Well, I think the videos are so. No. When you look at the videos, I mean, how does it get worse? And these are people that are officials, and they're saying that kill the white farmer and take their land. That's what it is. And I have other friends in South Africa. I have people that left. One in particular that says you can't go there. He said they want to take your land. They take your land and they kill you. It's okay, and they say it's okay to do. Now we're going to talk about it. But this is a tremendous look. This is a story recent. These are all people that recently got killed.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it can get any worse. These are and you know the men that you saw, the people that you saw in that movie, those are officials. Those are people that were in office. They had one march. They had a dance in your parliament, whatever you may call it, legislature.
But let me clarify that.
Yeah.
Let me clarify that, because what you saw, the speeches that were being made, one, that is not government policy. We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can
and then
take
when
land.
they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is
nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now
The farmers aren't black. The farmers are not black. I don't say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. And the people that are being killed in large numbers, and you saw all those grave sites, and those are people that loved ones going, I guess on a Sunday morning, they tell me, to pay respect to their loved ones that were killed. Their heads chopped off. They died violently. And, you know, I mean, we're here to talk about it, and I didn't know we'd get involved here. But I will say this, that if the news wasn't fake like NBC, which is fake news, totally one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible. But if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. But the fake news in this country doesn't talk about that. They don't want to talk about it, but now they have to talk about it. But they won't. This won't even be a subject. They'll have him talking about why did a country give a free, think of this, why did a country give an airplane to the United States Air Force? Okay, the United States, not to me, to the United States Air Force, so they could help us out, because we need an Air Force One until that's Air Force One, it's being built. 2 of them being built. But Boeing's a little bit late, unfortunately. So why did they give us a plane to the United States Air Force? That's what that idiot talks about after viewing a thing where thousands of people are dead.
I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did. I'd take it. I would take it. If your country offered the United States Air Force a plane, I would take it.
Okay. But coming back to this issue, which I really would like us to talk about, and talk about it very calmly. We were taught by Nelson Mandela that whenever there are problems, people need to sit down around a table and talk about them.
Well, there are problems.
And this is precisely what we would also like to talk about, including, of course, trade matters, investment matters. So the issues that concern you as the United States.
Those are all recent. And those are all deaths.
Yeah, in many ways, I mean, one should say you are a partner of South Africa, and you are raising concerns, and these are concerns that we are willing to talk to you about. Let me just add quickly, you know, the criminality that we are experiencing in our country needs quite a lot of technological capability. And in one of our areas in South Africa, we're using US technology, which is able to, in many ways, identify where shootings are happening and all that. And I'd like to talk about that, because there is support that we can get from you as the United States to help us deal with all these acts of criminality. And that is what I believe partnership is all about. And we are here as a partner so that we can help each other whenever there are challenges. So I'd like us to discuss it, and of course outside of the media, so that we sit down and have a really good discussion that will lead to good outcomes.
Are there any other further punitive measures that could be in place should you not be satisfied that South Africa is fixing some of the very bad things, in inverted commas, that you tweeted are happening?
Well, there are a lot of bad things happening in many countries, but this in particular has been very, very bad, and because of we're going to have the whole world watching in another short period of time, because you have the G20, and that's a big deal. And it seems like, I want you to look good. I don't want you to look bad.
Very good.
But we have hundreds of people, thousands of people trying to come into our country because they feel they're going to be killed and their land is going to be confiscated. And you do have laws that were passed that gives you the right to confiscate land for no payment. you can take away land for no payment.
I want to clarify that, because we have a constitution. Our constitution guarantees and protects the sanctity of tenure of land ownership. And that constitution protects all South Africans with regard to land ownership. However, we do say, because we've got to deal with the past, the government, and as your government also has the right to expropriate land for public use.
And you're doing that.
And we've never really gotten underway with that. And we are going to be doing
you're
so.
You're taking people's land away from them. And those people, in many cases, are being executed. They're being executed. And they happen to be white, and most of them happen to be farmers. And that's a tough situation. I don't know how you explain that. How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away, and in many cases, those people are being executed. And in many cases, it's not the government that's doing it. It's people that kill them and then take their land, and nothing happens to them. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country. They're also going to Australia in a smaller number. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country, and they're white farmers, and they feel that they're going to die in South Africa, and it's a bad thing. Yeah,
what can South Africa do? What concessions would you like to see them make to improve relations with the United States? Then I have one more for President Ramaphosa afterwards.
Well, we just spoke about, I got them a very, very complex machine, 150 of them. And I was asked by the president if he could help, and I did that. And, I have great feeling for all countries. I deal with all countries. But I have a great feeling for South Africa because I have friends. I have a couple of friends, a few friends here today. But I have many friends from South Africa. But many of those friends are not, they can't go back. I have, Elon is from South Africa. I don't want to get Elon involved. That's all I have to do, get him into another thing. But Elon happens to be from South Africa. This is what Elon wanted. He actually came here on a different subject, sending rockets to Mars, okay? Yes. He likes that better. He likes that subject better. But Elon is from South Africa, and I don't want to talk to him about that. I don't think it's fair to him.
That's right.
But I will say that people are fleeing South Africa for their own safety. Their land is being confiscated, and in many cases they're being killed. And that scene of, you see how many crosses they have. Those crosses, that's a dead person in every one of them. And those trucks or cars are paying their respects to all of those dead people on a Sunday morning. That's a rough thing to explain away. And the problem we have, and the way, a correct and a fair media exposes things. But we have a very corrupt media. They won't even report this. If this were the other way around, it would be the biggest story. Now, I will say apartheid, terrible. That was the biggest story. That was reported all the time. This is sort of the opposite of apartheid. What's happening now is never reported. Nobody knows about it. All we know is we're being inundated with people, with white farmers from South Africa. And it's a big problem. Marco Rubio was telling me he's never seen anything like it. The numbers of people that want to leave South Africa because they feel they're going to be dead very soon. Yes, please.
I was going to say,
Brian,
if I could just ask you a question. 72% of farmers in your country are white. If they flee, do you feel that maybe the economy could collapse? You may not have a gap to fill in those people that need to replace those farmers.
I'd like my Minister of Agriculture, who is white, who comes from an opposition party to mine, who's joined my government at my invitation to address this very issue, including the question that you just raised. John?
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Yeah.
And Mr. President, thank you for welcoming us to the White House. I would say we have a rural safety problem in South Africa, and I don't think anyone wants to candy coat that. And it requires a lot of effort to get on top of it. It's going to require more policing resources. It's going to require a different strategy to be able to deal with it. But certainly the majority of South Africa's commercial and smallholder farmers really do want to stay in South Africa and make it work. And I've just come from the largest agricultural show in the Southern Hemisphere with organized agriculture and farmers, and the majority of them want to stay. But they too, they have a memorial to those who've died as a result of farm attacks. And as the Minister of Agriculture, it is something that I'm particularly exercised with my colleagues at police and my colleagues in the justice cluster to start making farm attacks and stock theft a priority crime. And it affects all farmers in South Africa, particularly stock theft. It has a disproportionate effect on smallholder black farmers. I also want to just say this, that the two individuals that are in that video that you've seen are both leaders of opposition minority parties in South Africa. Mkhonto Wesizwe under Mr. Zuma, and the economic freedom fighters under Mr. Malema. Now, the reason that my party, the Democratic Alliance, which has been an opposition party for over 30 years, chose to join hands with Mr. Ramaphosa's party was precisely to keep those people out of power. We cannot have those people sitting in the union buildings making decisions. And that is why after 30 years of us exchanging barbs across the floor in Parliament and trying to get one over on each other, we've decided to join hands precisely to keep that lot out of government. Because the day they get in to the doors of the union buildings in South Africa or control of our Parliament, that's what you're going to see. And that is why this government, working together, needs the support of our allies around the world so that we can strengthen our hand, grow our economy, and shut the door forever on that rabble getting through the doors of the union buildings, because then South Africa's future would be...
So you denounced that type of language in the video that you saw?
Oh yes, we've always done so. As government, as my own party, we are completely opposed to that. We, in 1955, adopted a document which said South Africa belongs to all who live in it.
But why wouldn't you arrest that man? That man said, kill the white farmers, kill the white farmers. And then he danced, and he's dancing, and it's kill the white farmers. I think, I'm not sure, but I think if somebody got up in Parliament and started saying kill a certain group of people, he would be arrested very quickly. That man is going all over South Africa, and that's not a small party. That was a stadium that holds 100,000 people, and I hardly saw an empty seat. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of representation. And those crosses, we have dead white people, dead white farmers, mostly. And you take a look at Australia, they're being inundated, and we're being inundated with people that want to get out. And their farm is valueless. It's valueless. And they just want to get out with their life. And this is a very serious situation. And if we had a real news or real press or media, we don't have that because they won't talk about this because they're all guys like that idiot. But if we had a real press, it would be exposed. And you know, the beauty of exposing it is it's like a cleansing action. When it gets exposed, it'll get fixed. That's when it'll get fixed. But people don't talk about it. And I'll tell you who's talking about the thousands of people that are fleeing South Africa right now.
We discussed USAID and the devastating impact the cuts are having across the African continent.
Yeah, well, it's devastating, and hopefully a lot of people are going to start spending a lot of money. And I've talked to other nations. We want them to chip in and spend money too. And we've spent a lot, and it's a tremendous problem going on in many countries. A lot of problems going on. The United States always gets the request for money. Nobody else helps, as you know. Europe doesn't help. Europe hasn't given anything. All they do is sue our companies. You know, they sue Apple, and they sue all of our companies. Apple had to pay $17 billion on a nonsense lawsuit. Very unfair. But we're going to always be there to help.
It's showing rightly South African broadcasting. If this Afrikaner resettlement issue is resolved, we're going to go into a room after this, you guys are going to talk. If it is resolved, what is the potential for the future-looking relationship?
It's fantastic. It's got to be resolved. It should be resolved. It's a little bit bad when you see a stadium with 100,000 people in it, because that means it's more than just a little movement. It's a pretty big movement in South Africa. So it has to be resolved. It'll be the end of the country if it's not resolved.
But is there potential for the relationship moving forward?
I hope so. That's why I'm here. I mean, I'm not here for my health. I'm here to see what we can do. No, I'd like to see. I have friends. I can tell you, Ernie Els and Retief Goosen, they feel so strongly they wanted to be here on behalf of South Africa, not on behalf of me. And, you know, they said, can we be here for this? Because they love the country. Ernie, do you guys want to say a couple of words or anything? I hate to put you in this. This is tougher than sinking a 3-footer. Which they have, and they've sank many 3-footers.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thanks for the honor of being here. We've known each other a long time. We have spoken. You know, we're proud South Africans. I still have my South African passport. You know, we travel with this passport, you know, and I got my visa here. So, you know, but we want to see things get better in our home country. And that's the bottom line. It's been 35 years since the transition. President Ramaphosa was right in the middle of the transition time in 1990 and before that. So it's been 35 years of ANC government, and I know there's a lot of anger, you know, through the transition. There was also a lot of stuff happening in the apartheid days. You know, we grew up in the apartheid era, but I don't think two wrongs makes a right. You know, President Mandela, when he came out of prison for all that time, didn't come out with hatred, you know, and really unified our nation through sport. You know, we won the Rugby World Cup in '95.
4 times.
We won the African Nations Cup, soccer. You know, we won some majors as golfers and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, this has been a long time coming. That's why we really wanted to meet you, meet the administration, and see our way forward, because we still want to see our country flourish. You know, we've got some great things going on. Business is getting involved with government. Farmers are getting involved in local municipalities, trying to rebuild some of the infrastructure that's been decaying for a long time. So there's a lot of coexistence going on and help from a lot of areas. But I feel we need the US to push this thing through. We've got a great ally, if we can have the US. It's always been an ally of South Africa for a very long time. Even in the days of the war, you know, up in Angola, you know, you guys helped us. So very important for us to have your support and you know, get the change we need.
Where did you do that well? He might have done that even better than he plays golf, which is almost impossible. Johan, please.
Sorry, Mr. President, if you had to wind all of those tapes properly, you will see I'm the biggest target of that rabble-rouser. Number one for over 10 years, Mr. Malema. In fact, the first time I met him, he was in the youth league with that gentleman, and look how he's changed.
Right.
We have too many deaths, but it's across the board. It's not only white farmers, it's across the board. And we need technological help. We need Starlink at every little police station. We need drones. I actually got drones donated for the peace parks to stop elephant and rhino poaching. And his predecessor stopped the importation because he said the United States would spy on us. I mean, US basics, the ridicule. So if you can help us. Remember, sir, you and I lived in New York in the 70s. We never thought New York could be what it became. 2 commissioners, a tough mayor. We need your help to stop this awful killing. But it's across the board. Ernie is right now building a house in George I'm building 3 cottages for my grandchildren on a farm outside Grafrenet. I often go to bed without locking the door. And we have a serious problem with illegal aliens who stream across the border. And if you really look at our statistics, a lot of these murders, firstly it's unemployment and illegal aliens. And then I met Vice President Vance many years ago at the Charlie Rose show. My wife loved the book. And she reminded me this morning that you emphasized the devastation that occurs when big companies leave towns and cities, and there's a culture of dependency that develops. I remember you discussing it. Now that's our problem. If we don't get our economy to grow, the culture of dependency and the lawlessness will increase. I've again been against apartheid all my life, and I'm their #1 target. Please just Google my name and Malema. You'll see it, sir.
Yeah.
He marched on the farm.
But the crime is bad.
The crime is terrible, sir, but Mr. Steenhuisen won't admit to it, but he runs the Western Cape, where I live. And the biggest murder rate is in the Cape Flats. Gangs. We've got gang warfare. Like your M33 or whatever, these guys. We've got the equivalents there. But we need your help, sir. And we need Elon technology.
Well, one of the real areas of support is really in investments. We've got to grow our economy, because through growing the economy, we're then able to create more jobs. Because crime really thrives where there is inequality and unemployment. And that is one of the reasons that has brought us here, to improve our investment relations, our trade relations, so that we can preserve the number of jobs that your companies have created in South Africa. By virtue of what we export to you, we are able to create up to 500,000 jobs in the auto industry, in the agricultural industry, and a number of other industries, mining, where we export things to you. And we also know that as South African companies invest here, you are also able to create jobs. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So our main real reason for being here is to foster trade and investment, so that we are able to grow our economy with your support, and so that we are also able to address all these societal problems, because criminality thrives when people are unemployed, when they have no other hope to eke out a living. So that is what we need to resolve. And your support, your partnership with us is what is really going to give us a strong capability to move forward.
Excuse me, do you have anything to say? I mean, I don't want to leave you out. You know, the guy won 3 or 4 majors. 3 or 4?
No, only 2.
2. That's a lot. By the way, 2's a lot. A lot of tournaments you won too. You have anything to say?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. President Ramaphosa. I grew up in an area in South Africa that is a farmland area, Polokwane.
Yeah.
And there is some issues up there. Obviously, my dad was a property developer as well as a part-time farmer. And yeah, some of these buddy farmers got killed. The farm is still going. My brothers run it. But it's a constant battle with farms they're trying to burn the farms down to chase you away. So it is a concern to try and make a living as a farmer. And at the end, without farmers, there's no food on the plate. So we need the farmers
and your
to
brother
produce
loves
the food.
farming, right? He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't even want to do what you're doing, right? They love farming. They don't want to leave. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, and food and fresh water is the most important thing in life. Without those 2 things, we can't survive.
How is the water there?
The water is great. Obviously, all the water comes out of the borehole, out of ground for us down there. But yeah, it is a battle to get the ore out sometimes when all the equipment gets stolen all the time that you're trying to get the
So
ore
does
out.
your family and your brother, do they feel safe on the farm?
They live behind electric fences, you know, try and be at night safe. But it is constant whenever you leave that something could happen. And
there's nowhere to live.
you know, both of them has been attacked in their houses. My mom's been attacked in her house when she was 80. So it is difficult. But you know, the guys live a great life despite everything going on.
Something.
President Trump, I brought along the president of the largest trade union in our country, Ziggy Solosi, because she leads many, many workers, more than 1 million, 2 million workers. And maybe we should give her a chance to say something, because she's come all the way to join us.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Trump,
Thank you.
for having us, and President, for extending the invitation to us as organized labor. And I must say that we are here to support the initiative that has been made by our government with business, of course, as organized labor. We've been coming to Washington on the AGOA trade relations in the previous regime. And I think at the center of it all, for me, it is exactly what Mr. Rupert has said, the importance of us growing the economy. We have always emphasized when we were here and kept on coming and negotiating on AGOA that the 600 US companies that are based in South Africa, as you said, President Ramaphosa, 500,000 jobs will be wiped out. We need more foreign direct investment in our country. We are not just talking about those that will lose employment, but we are talking about over 40% of people that are unemployed, that have no hope of ever finding a job. And we think that, correctly, as they have said, that we need to deal with the issue of porous borders in our country, so that everyone that comes in is documented. We also need to, and I would have thought that the minister would address the issue of land expropriation and how the policy works in South Africa. Recently, President, as you were preparing to come here on the news, in, I think it was in Natal, there was a handover of farms, and white farmers were saying, we are donating the land, but also there's a willing buyer, willing seller in South Africa. So there is no expropriation without compensation, but it is a willing buyer, willing seller. And that white farmer was even saying, President, that the government is even paying more in buying the land than what the land is worth of. And I think those are the realities, President, that we must say that we need to address, of course, but also the importance of agriculture linked to AGOA. People rely on it, and I think, as Retief have said, for survival and living. But lastly, for me, President, is also the issue of the crime statistics. There is no doubt about it that we are a violent nation, you know, for a number of reasons, and we're not condoning anything. But also, if you go into the rural areas where black majority are, you would see women, elderly, being raped, being killed, being murdered. And these are black elderly women that would be found throat slits, raped multiple times, and all of that. And the problem in South Africa, it is not necessarily about race, but it is about crime. And we think that we are here to say, how do we, both nations, work together to reset, to really talk about investment, but also help us in how we can have the technology and everything that is needed, President, to really address the levels of crime that we have in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
President Trump, genocide is a very strong word. I'm wondering if you've made up your mind as to whether you believe genocide is occurring in South Africa, or you still have doubts, and if you have made up your mind, why invite President Ramaphosa here today for this conversation?
Well, I haven't made up my mind. I hate to see it from the standpoint of South Africa, but also, you know, I'm trying to save lives. I'm working with Russia and Ukraine. I don't have to do that. It's not our war. It was started by other people. It was helped along by our past administration, and it would have never happened if I were president. But I'm trying to save lives, no matter where. Rwanda, I have nothing to do with Rwanda and the Congo, but I felt I had a very talented person in this administration, and I sent him there, and he did an unbelievable job. I think. I mean, we're going to find out, but he's done the hardest part of the job. It should happen. If I can save lives, I want to save the lives. If it's in Africa, that's great. If it's in Europe, if it's wherever it may be, and it's a very small investment to do, believe me, compared to what the consequences are. So I hope we can do something. Look, I have so many friends. These two men, I have great admiration for them because I know what they do for a living. And that's a very hard living, going from city to city, from country to country, and hitting a ball 350 yards like they do, and
Better than you and I.
getting the ball in the hole. It's a very tough, with lots of people watching, right?
Yes,
That's a very tough living. You know, they're champions. I respect champions. And I respect very much, and I think the country is very lucky. They really wanted to be here.
That's true.
They could be elsewhere. They could be on a beautiful fairway someplace, and they wanted to be here. So,
My name is Yanda Noble from Newsroom Africa in South Africa. How important is it for the United States to be at our G20 summit in November, given the relationship between our two countries? You've just heard what has been said to you just now. Are you coming, and are you preparing to come?
So without the United States, the G20, just like the G7, used to be the G8, but brilliantly they threw Russia out. Would have been a lot better if Russia was in. You know, a lot of people would say, oh, that's not it. Because if Russia was in, you probably wouldn't have this war. And if you had a different president, you wouldn't have the war either. But we have a G7. It's important that the United States is at both of them. I think without the United States, it's I really believe it's not very important. It's not the same meaning.
As I said to President Trump, the U.S. really originated the G20. And it's important that the United States continues to play a key role in the G20. And we are privileged to be the president of the G20, but we are even overjoyed that we are going to hand over to the United States, who are the originators. And for that reason, I expect the United States to continue playing the leadership role in the G20 together with other countries. And I've said when I initially spoke to President Trump on the phone, I want him to come to South Africa for a state visit, and I also want him to come and participate in the G20. And I want to gladly hand over to President Trump to take the leadership of the G20 forward in November.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
What is it going to take to convince you
They
to
don't want to
come
leave.
the G20?
They like you so
And that's the way it went down. And I let that roll because I think it's important that we see the whole thing in full context, especially because we are getting tonight two very, very, very different perspectives or views on this, opinions, if you will, even realities. So if you, I mean, you listened to that. Now, I don't live in South Africa. I would imagine many of you don't live in South Africa. I don't know how many of you have ever been to South Africa. I have not been there. So, like most of you, I expect I have to rely on media to inform my perspective. I've seen, especially through media outlets like Rebel, many reports over the last few years about violence in South Africa. And I don't know how accurate it is, because when you are looking at video, especially if you are not familiar with where it came from or how it has been put together, it can be distorting, because media, social media, television, video, it focuses very narrowly on one small piece of the world at one particular time and at one moment, and it captures that, but then repeats that moment over and over again, hundreds, thousands, millions, maybe even billions of times, where you get impressions on human beings who then absorb that information, and from that you get opinion. So you can take a moment in time in a very specific place and blow that up into a much broader thing and create a complete distortion of how big or small something is. You can alter people's perceptions. You can actually create a false reality. I'm not saying that's what's happened here at all. I don't know. But if you listened to all of those comments, you got, even in the comments in the Oval Office, some conflicting perspectives on how many people have died, who's dying, are these really predominantly white farmers or not? I don't know. And that's the thing. I really don't know. And I'm always trying to remain impartial and open to information. And I try to drill down and get to real facts and get us. That's how you get a more accurate perspective. Tonight, when you look at a lot of media outlets around the world, they're saying that what Trump is focusing on here is a distortion, or maybe even outright false. I don't know that that's the case. I don't think that, based on what I've seen, even what I heard here, which really, it did inform me more because of the divide in the opinions, even from some of these South African government officials all there together. But here's Reuters news service. It's important to take note of these guys because they supply stories to media outlets. They don't just publish the stuff themselves. It's a newswire service. Trump makes false claims, says the White House, of white genocide in South Africa during meeting. And here we are. U.S. President Donald Trump made several false claims, statements, and misrepresented some facts about the alleged persecution of South Africa's white minority during a contentious Oval Office meeting on Wednesday with the president of South Africa. Ramaphosa tried to rebuff the assertions, but was frequently interrupted by Trump, who repeated the claims. Trump had staff play a video consisting mostly of years-old clips of inflammatory speeches by some South African politicians that have been circulating on social media. I've seen those videos myself, and I can tell you honestly that, yes, they have had an impact on me and have formed, at least, they've had an influence over my perspective on this. And I can say, sitting here tonight as well, that I now realize that I did not have a proper perspective on what those videos were. I tried to find the one that they showed there specifically. I wasn't able to find it online before coming on tonight. Otherwise, I would share that even directly with you. Anyway, Reuters continues here and says, among the claims contradicted by the evidence, one, there is a genocide of white farmers in South Africa. That's a strong word, genocide. But here we continue with what they're saying. This conspiracy theory has been propagated by some fringe groups of white South Africans since the end of apartheid in 1994. It has been circulating in global far-right chat rooms for at least a decade with the vocal support of Trump's ally, South African-born Elon Musk. Supporters of the theory point to murders of white farmers, and I have heard Elon Musk refer to this. And again, I don't live there. Supporters of the theory point to murders of white farmers in remote rural areas of the country as proof of a politically orchestrated campaign of ethnic cleansing rather than ordinary violent crime. They accuse the black majority-led government of being complicit in the farm murders, either by encouraging them or at least turning a blind eye. The government strongly denies this. South Africa has one of the world's highest murder rates, with an average of 72 a day. In a country of 60 million people, most victims are black. So maybe that's where the perspective comes in. If they have, that's a lot of murders in a day. And if the vast majority of them are black, even if a minority are white, you still have a lot of dead white people, a lot of dead white farmers. We have a lot of dead black people as well. So maybe the issue is just crime. Maybe it isn't race-based. But I know that in this world, there's a whole lot of racism all the way around. And I wouldn't be surprised a bit if these cultural and race issues are a factor in all of this. South African police, it says here, recorded 26,232 murders nationwide last year, of which 44 were linked to farming communities. Of those, 8 of the victims were farmers. The High Court in Western Cape Province ruled the claims of white genocide were, quote, clearly imagined and not real, in a case earlier this year forbidding a donation to a white supremacist group on those grounds. 2, the government is expropriating land from white farmers without compensation, including through violent and land seizures in order to distribute it to black South Africans. I've seen claims like that. The government, it says here, has a policy of attempting to redress inequalities in land ownership that are a legacy of apartheid and colonialism, but no land is being expropriated, and the government has instead tried to encourage white farmers to sell their land willingly. Well, encouraging people to sell their land, I don't know what exactly that means. But if the government is encouraging you to sell your land, you have to ask yourself why, what is the policy, and at what point does it cross the line and become expropriation? I don't know. Don't live there. That hasn't worked, it says. Some 3/4 of privately owned farmland is still in the hands of whites, who make up less than 8% of the population, while 4% is owned by black South Africans, who make up 80%. In an effort to address this, Ramaphosa signed a law in January allowing the state to expropriate land in the public interest, in rare cases without compensating the owner. The law requires authorities to first try to reach an agreement. It still hasn't been used. So when I'm reading that, it doesn't sound like Trump is entirely wrong. Number 3, the Kill the Boer Farmer song, sung by some black South Africans, is an explicit call to murder Afrikaners. This is what they're saying is the conspiracy. The ethnic group of European descent who make up the majority of whites and who own most of the farmland. The song dates back to the resistance against apartheid, when Afrikaner nationalists controlled the country. In one of the video clips Trump showed, firebrand opposition leader Julius Malema of the Marxist Economic Freedom Fighters is singing the song. We're almost done with this. 3 South African courts have ruled against attempts to have it designated as hate speech on the basis that it is a historical liberation chant, not a literal incitement to violence. In a statement following the meeting, Trump and Ramaphosa, the EFF, said it was, quote, a song that expresses the desire to destroy the system of white minority control over the resources of South Africa, and that it is a, quote, a part of African heritage. And then this is an interesting issue, because Trump sits there, says that these people should be thrown in jail. They're political leaders, leaders of a political party, protected by the South African laws. And this is coming from a president who is surrounded by people, and I think also pushes back against what he would probably qualify as hate speech laws, saying we don't believe that's those things are constitutional or even proper because they run against the ideals of free speech, absolutist free speech. And yet he sits there and calls for the imprisonment of political leaders in South Africa. And I totally get it, but where do you draw the line? And number 4 here, Trump played a video clip that showed a long line of white crosses on the side of a highway which Trump said were burial sites for white farmers, and I'm sure that can't be accurate. The video was made in September 2020. It says here during a protest against farm murders after 2 people were killed on their farm a week earlier. The crosses did not mark actual graves. An organizer told South Africa's public broadcaster, SABC, at the time that the wooden crosses represented farmers who had been killed over the years. So, yeah, they were representative, an expression. I don't know if the numbers are even, if he said 1,000, I don't know. Who knows how? I don't know how many people have been murdered. I'd have to go digging into stats. I'm just bringing you the news on the fly here tonight. The opening scene, number 5, the opening scene of the White House shows Malma in South Africa's parliament announcing, quote, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from the president. It also shows another clip of him pledging to expropriate land. Some land has been illegally occupied over the years, mostly by millions of desperate squatters with nowhere else to go, although some land seizures are politically motivated. The land is usually unused, and there's no evidence the EFF orchestrated any land invasions. And I don't live there, so I can't say one way or the other what exactly the truth is. I can only say that we saw some conflicting views there tonight, and the conflict in perspective continues right here in this direct statement, which was released following today's meeting in the Oval Office by the White House, where we're told that President Trump is right about what's happening in South Africa. And in this statement, President Donald J. Trump showed the world the shocking treatment of white farmers in South Africa, including with a video montage that highlighted the discrimination and violence targeted at the innocent minority victims. President Trump was exactly right. He says, we left because of the attacks. You can't stay on a farm as a white person in South Africa. You'll be killed, said one South African refugee. They're showing different links here to media articles, BBC. Interesting how they're actually almost exclusively here citing mainstream media outlets. Isn't that interesting, to defend the president's position on this? New York Post, the Daily Mail, BBC, New York Times, Sky News, The Independent, New York Sun, The Independent, News.com, Australia, The Daily Mail, Fox News. You can believe these reports, though, not the other ones. Just most of it's fake news, except when he says it isn't. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't live there. I am skeptical about all of it. My guess, I'm just guessing, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle of all of this violence and death. Certainly, we've confirmed that these people are dying. The question is why. The other interesting thing that came up in that, and I just made a note to mention it here, is the request for technology from the U.S. and from Elon Musk in order to combat the crime. And then I don't know who that politician was who was there with the president, but we heard that there is pushback, especially from these minority parties and certain groups of people over there in South Africa who he said are worried about the technology being used to spy on people. So here you have Trump sitting in the Oval Office, supported largely, I would say. There's a big group of people, many of them, maybe even people here tonight in our chat, who are very concerned about technology, spying, tracking people, 15-minute cities, these kinds of issues. And, some people are at the point where they're afraid to walk outside their homes because they're afraid of the lampposts, because a lot of people are afraid they're going to be tracked or their picture will be taken. I understand, but there's Trump with Elon Musk, the man, the keeper of the technology, being asked by these guys in South Africa, same issues, same questions, same concerns. Worried about a descent into a police state, a surveillance police state, Orwellian, 1984 style, CCP, Chinese Communist Party. And it's just ironic that they're coming to Trump for help with the technology. The president, embraced by people here in Canada and the US, the MAGA crowd that is extremely concerned about the use of such technology, but he's the guy who is aligned with the guy who is the keeper of the technology, and everybody loves the guy that is concerned about the very technology that they're, it's all, isn't that weird? You see what I'm saying? It's just kind of strange. So you want to solve the crime? You need the technology. But if you have the technology, it is a balancing act. It really, these are philosophical questions that you have to be addressed. Socioeconomic issues, issues of personal liberty, freedom at the core of it. And they're not easy questions to answer. But if you step back and you really look at the issues, sometimes more security gives you more freedom. Even if you think that you're getting, that you are being, that your freedoms are being restricted, sometimes allowing some restrictions on personal freedoms gives you more freedom because it creates a more stable society so that you are now freer to go about your business every day without fear of being attacked or robbed, that the crime is not as prevalent in your community. You're not going to be assaulted when you walk down the street because these issues are being addressed in a way that puts limits on people's freedoms so that everybody can have more freedom, because true freedom comes from having a stable society, a stable community. Thus, in Canada, we call that peace, order, and good government. It's a very difficult thing to get to this point. Honestly, folks, that's why I say Canada, not a myth. It's a darn miracle. Every day we get up and there's food on the table and the supply chains are still functional. And somehow we still have a functioning economy in spite of all the abuse that is heaped upon it. And I can walk around the block and I don't, there's not much chance that I'm going to be assaulted or be subject to any kind of violence. That's in our world, when you think about all the conflict, all the competition that is out there between human beings and countries. It's amazing that we've had pieces that we've had for so long, that we have the standard of living that we have today and the stability in spite of all the instability. It's truly, truly amazing that we get along as well as we do in a world just filled with conflict. And then they talked about the economy, and that's also something that just brings us all the way back to Canada again. Just a comment that I made earlier tonight about the economy, the credit rating, our debt to GDP. And the other reason Canada is actually in a better position heading into the future than the United States today is because we're in a better position to be able to grow, and we have a lower debt to GDP ratio. When I was looking at the numbers over the last couple of days, the United States will need to grow at a rate of about 4 to 5, maybe even 6% every year to stay ahead of its escalating debt. And now that their credit rating has been dropped, they'll have to pay more to service that debt every single day. More in interest to those that they borrow money from around the world. Canada, we're still rated number one, along with a few other countries, kind of tied for debt to GDP ratio. And because of our level of debt, we only need to grow at about 1.5% to 2% every year to have our economy sustainable. And we can grow well beyond that because we have a resource-based economy and a population that is also at this point, sustainable. We have so much that we can do to expand our economy, especially if we get our act together, start working together, stop all this infighting, and solve some of these trade issues, especially internally, and get these products to market, including oil and other resources from our mines or future mines, lumber. It's easy to do some of that stuff, easier than it is to even build factories sometimes and get other industries going. So we have so much going for us here. If only people would see that, realize it. And I've said for a long time, ever since, resurrecting this news channel, I've said that the key to everything, the key to our debt, the key to sustaining our economy, in spite of all the negativity and the concerns about money printing, inflation, and all of these issues, and an aging population, and on, is growth. We can grow our way out of all of these issues. And yeah, we have the numbers behind us, like it backs us up. So I'm actually pretty darn optimistic. As long as we can get along and get our political house in order here and stop all the divisive fighting. But I have my own views on that. Others may disagree. They will. I'll be right back. Stay with me.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's dig into some of these other issues here tonight. First up, just before we get into the ostrich thing, again, it's the story that just won't stop. So okay. Canada Post has declined an offer from the union representing postal workers for a 2-week extension offer. We're looking at a possible strike there again. So we got what, 55,000 employees of the postal service in this country. The negotiating, and I think we could have a strike there. Is it this Friday, I believe? Let me just check that. So yeah, I guess this the union had offered a 2-week extension, and Canada Post has rejected that. Canada Post says that they have offered a wage increase for workers, offering a gain of 6% in 1 year, 3% in year 2, and 2% in years 3 and 4, for a compounded increase of 13.59%. That signals anticipated inflation for sure. And I don't know. So keep an eye on it. We'll see where it goes over the next day or so. Also, big story out of the Middle East. Let me just get you the latest on that, because Anita Anand has summoned the Israeli ambassador over the IDF firing warning shots, I guess. So Canada wants an explanation as to why the Israel Defense Forces fired these warning shots near this diplomatic tour in the West Bank today. And Carney came out and said that the situation is, in his words, totally unacceptable, and says Canada does expect an explanation for what has happened. And the Israeli military says it, quote, regrets the inconvenience caused by these warning shots. These diplomats were touring the city of Jenin. And here's Anita Anand on social media saying, I spoke with Canada's head of mission. Here, I'll bring it up so you can see it. And this after, was it yesterday or the day before? I think it was yesterday. You saw Canada, along with several other European nations, saying that, they're condemning really the actions of Israel, saying that food is not being allowed to get into Gaza, and if things don't change, they're going to take, quote, concrete actions. So it seems that things are shifting here. And here's the post from Anita Anand. It says, I spoke with Canada's head of mission in Ramallah earlier today. I can confirm 4 of our personnel were part of the delegation in West Bank when the IDF fired shots in the vicinity. Relieved to know our team is safe. I have asked my officials to summon Israel's ambassador. And she's asking the ambassador to convey Canada's serious concerns back to the government. She says they expect a full investigation and accountability. So tensions rising there. Mr. Netanyahu not too popular with Anita Anand or Mark Carney. Now on to the Ostrich story, where today, I guess, RCMP showed up briefly. It was like, red alert on the Universal Ostrich Farm out in British Columbia, where, if you're not familiar with the story, if you've had your head stuck in the sand like an ostrich and you're not aware of what's been going on out there, The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says they will move ahead with a cull of about 400 of these birds on the farm because of an avian flu outbreak that they became aware of back in January. 69 birds died. Tests confirmed the presence of the disease on site. We have been doing pretty extensive coverage here and revealing information that people haven't seen really any other place, showing that these birds have been, after 2020, when the pandemic hit the farm, pivoted from using the birds to as a meat for meat production, food supply, sending them off to slaughter and off to market, to research, because the slaughterhouses shut down and it was a shrinking industry and there's just a lot of economic factors in play. So they pivoted to research, and we showed that they indeed were being injected with COVID-19 synthetic genetically engineered antigens, and that the farm was working, and I think they continue to try to work with a researcher at a university in Japan, using the antigens to stimulate the immune systems of the birds so that they produce these antibodies, which then become present in large quantities in the eggs, which were then used for research purposes and the development of products like face masks, which kind of weird, nasal sprays where these antibodies are used, and for cosmetics. None of these actually approved drugs. They're therapeutics, classified as cosmetics or nutraceuticals, things in those veins. And it's kind of a long story. But because of the reports we've done here on Maverick News, showing facts and showing truth and showing full perspective, you know, that there are protesters out there trying to prevent the cull of these 400 birds. They're being characterized as almost, well, human. They've personified them through their storytelling. And we've tried to provide full perspective. And I just want to, before I show you the statement tonight from the farm owners in response to a lot of the reporting that has resulted in questions and concerns from a lot of people, many of whom have donated a lot of money to this cause, Save the Ostriches. Karen Esperson was on our program, and I'm just going to run the clip again here to confirm for you that I did not make anything up here. Everything is backed up, and I'm not being critical of this. This is just the way they were. I mean, to some degree, I've leveled some criticisms on in some areas, but I'm just running this tonight to show you that she herself confirms that they were injecting these birds with COVID antigens as part of a research project. They were running an open air biolab. Here it is. Oh, so you mentioned you would walk among them and give them this antigen. How does that work? I don't understand how it's administered.
How is it administered? It's just like I said, it's a tiny, tiny amount that you give an inoculation to the hen, but it's just the tiniest antigen. And it's the same thing, like I said, when they do natural chicken antibodies. And if you think about it, when you eat a chicken egg, you're eating whatever is predominant antibodies in that chicken. So ostrich are absolutely no different.
So you were, like, was this an aerosolized thing, or was it an injection?
No, it's a needle. We give them a needle. But like I said, and we monitored very much to make sure that the animal was not infected or affected in any sense of the form.
So the government doesn't recognize your science?
No, they won't acknowledge us at all. and we're natural. That's what we are saying. We're offering something that's completely natural.
Did they have concerns about
the government be all over it?
Did they tell you why, or did they not like your protocols, your biosecurity issues, or
They
was it?
absolutely no. We've been 100% under quarantine, and we've been following every rule to be very strict. And in the beginning, to protect the public, because we weren't sure what we were dealing with. So we've been very strict with everything. The biggest thing with the government is we believe that this goes beyond just our science. This is to take down all the small farms, and this is where it really hit us. This is more of a movement. It's just not our farm and just not our science, but this has to do with our food sovereignty. This has to do with taking animals out, and they want farmers. They only want if you have 100,000 chickens or more. They want you to be all your animals in buildings. They don't want these backyard people. They don't want farmers to be able to have their animals out in fields.
Well, they were injecting the birds with synthetic, genetically engineered COVID antigens. That's what I said. That's what she said. What I said, what I've been saying is 100% accurate in that regard. And she confirmed it. That's where I got the information. That's where I confirmed it. And in her statement, in their statement tonight, they're not contradicting any of that. It's just factual. Now, one thing I will take exception to is they keep saying this is natural. Natural. We're just a natural backyard farming operation with ostriches. And ostriches are a niche thing. Ostrich farms in Canada do not have thousands of birds. In fact, Universal Ostrich Farm is one of the biggest, and was for a long time, maybe still is the biggest in Canada. That's as big as they get. I don't know what's natural about injecting a bird with a synthetic anything. If it's synthetic, it's not natural. But you can describe it any way you want. You can put, to me, that's spin. Here's the official statement, which we were told was coming, and then here it is today. Official statement from Universal Ostrich Farm in Edgewood, BC. Official statement. If every citizen held the government to this same level of scrutiny, what is the goal here? To save healthy animals. And we don't know if they're healthy or unhealthy at this point. They keep saying they're healthy, but I'm not seeing proof of that. But anyway, from an inhumane and unjustified death. Those are statements, and I can tell you this, when the CFI goes in there and calls these birds, it will be done in a humane way. That is part of the whole equation. They don't go in there and conduct these things in an inhumane way. They'll euthanize the birds. They won't murder them in the sense that people are portraying this. It says our shared mission is simple and powerful: to protect healthy animals and ultimately people from an unnecessary, inhumane fate. Let's rise above the noise of accusations and focus on the real questions that deserve thoughtful answers. Farmers are juggling biosecurity measures, animal care, community concerns, and so much more. This isn't about avoiding hard conversations. It's about supporting those who work tirelessly as farmers for what is right. If you read something you're not sure of or need clarification, please refer to this living document at saveourostriches.com. If questions still linger, feel free to email, and then they give you this email address before sharing possibly inaccurate information. Asking questions is much more productive than sharing unverified and misunderstood portions of information. Please consider that sharing false information and statements can be considered defamation, will damage the farm's reputation, and increase our farm's exposure to harm. Well, let's make sure we get it accurate then. That's why we offered to have Katie on the program last night, and our guest, Rudy Bruce, was speaking directly with Katie, but never clicked on the link to join the program. When we choose collaboration over conflict, we are stopping the shaking the ants actions, and we are forging a stronger, kinder, and united future for our animals, our farmers, and our community. Official statement from Universal Ostrich Farms. Here it goes. Note, this document will be updated as questions arise to ensure transparency and address any misconceptions. Universal Ostrich Farms, Inc. background. For over 30 years, business partners Karen Esperson and Dave Belinsky have upheld the highest standards in animal welfare and scientific integrity. Below, we clarify our history, practices, and recent challenges to address misinformation and affirm our dedication to transparency. Founding and operations, incorporated in 2001, Universal Ostrich Farms, Inc., led by Karen Esperson and Dave Belinsky, has ethically raised ostriches for 3 decades with a focus on ethical breeding and care. Struthio Bioscience, Inc., launched in May 2022 rather. This division partnered with Dr. Tsukamoto of Kyoto University to develop and purify ostrich-derived antibodies, IgY, for research and therapeutic applications. Therapeutic meaning, cosmetic, not necessarily a drug approved by the FDA or Health Canada. We're talking about these products that, we've highlighted here, the hair solutions, the nasal spray, the lozenges, the face masks. Mission to advance sustainable farming and contribute to scientific progress through safe, non-invasive antibody production. Antigen research versus vaccination. Vaccinations, actually. Okay. Antigen exposure. In our projects, we used only, and here it is right here, synthetic, non-infectious antigens to stimulate antibody production. It's synthetic. And that's exactly what I said. I never said anything different. I did use different words that came from Dr. Tsukamoto, who called it, and I hope I get this accurate, a synthetic genetically engineered pseudovirus. In other words, it's something that they engineer in a lab. But it's inactive or supposed to be inactive. Nevertheless, there are safety protocols that have to be taken. And as Karen indicated in the interview, especially in the early going, they did not know what they were dealing with. And so they had to make sure they took extremely that they had to take a lot of precautions. And whether they continued to do that or not, they say they did. That you can make your own assessment, or the CFIA will make assessments in that regard as well. And I think there are some real concerns here about exposure to wildlife in these open air enclosures, because a lot of other creatures, including ducks and other birds and mice and who knows what, can come and go from inside those enclosures. That's how they were told they became infected with the bird flu. This is a standard process that is being used in natural avian antibody production. It's not natural if it's synthetic. Synthetic means just the opposite. So I can't just accept that, because it's clearly synthetic, because the words have even being used. Synthetic means not natural. These fragments cannot cause disease. Antibodies are safely harvested from egg yolks without harming the birds. However, it does mess with their immune systems one way or the other, And I know that there are precautions that need to be taken when conducting this kind of research using these antigens. Terminology clarified. Zero inoculation, the deliberate introduction of a pure antigen by injection or any way of entry to the body without any additional substances to induce, as I said, to induce immunity and antibody production. That's what I said. Antigen exposure is not a vaccine. I never said it was. It uses non-infectious synthetic fragments to prime immunity. That's right, induce the production of antibodies. In fact, vaccinations kind of do somewhat the same sort of thing. Vaccination, the process of administering a vaccine. Vaccine here says a substance that contains disease causing preparation of killed, weakened, or part of a microorganism, as well as adjuvants, preservatives, and chemicals to stimulate the immune system to protect against disease in the future. Immunization, the broad term for any process, natural or artificial, that readies the immune system to fight a potential invader. It represents both vaccination and inoculation processes. Safety, our antigen exposure process is distinct from vaccination, using Ostrich's natural immune systems. We do not produce antibodies with live viruses or mRNA, farm operations, and health history. That is further clarification. And I think even further explanation might be warranted with regard to all of that. Current focus since 2020, we have focused on breeding, antibody research, and supporting new farmers that want to get into the agriculture industry, proving out value-added products such as meat, oil, leather, feathers, and manure. Meat processing ceased in the summer of 2019. Yeah, although there's some question about that in the court documents, but I left that as an open-ended question. Again, I don't think I've said anything that's inaccurate in the other programs. If I've misspoken, I'm open to clarification, but that's what we're doing here right now. We're trying to cover this from all angles and get all the perspectives. 2020 Pseudomonas outbreak. In March 2020, which she talked about in our interview, a diagnosis of Pseudomonas bacterial infection confirmed by a lab in veterinarian affected 3% of birds, 10 birds total, with survivors developing natural and eventual herd immunity, or so they say. No further outbreaks or disease occurred until December 2024. So you've got the birds getting sick back in 2020 and now again in 2024, December. They're not talking about, I don't think, the charges that they were levied. Maybe they do later. We'll see. Bird sales in June 2021. 6 birds, neither injected with antigens nor offspring of injected hens, were sold for breeding, not food, as breeders are too valuable for slaughter. No injected birds entered the food chain. Okay, good. COVID-19 antibody research. 2020, 2021. Collaboration from April to October 2020 and 2021. We contracted out Immune Biosolutions for them to provide an antigen and to extract and purify the universal ostrich from antibodies. That's because when the pandemic was on, as I told you on the program, they could not bring the antigen from Japan into Canada at the time for a bunch of different reasons. Related to the pandemic and shipping and restrictions and so on. So they were doing it, I guess, with this Biosolutions company, and purify the universal ostrich from antibodies under regular common non-disclosure confidentiality clauses on COVID-19 antibody research. Separately, Immune Biosolutions received a $13.44 million grant. I told you yesterday it was $13 million from the Canadian government for their own work, right? Neither Universal Ostrich Farms or Struthio received any payment, funding, or benefit from Immune Biosolutions or directly from the government. Instead, the farm's contract was abruptly terminated without any reason presented to our farm. And I said that as well. And we weren't sure exactly what the details were with regard to the $13 million grant or where they stand with that contract. But this seems to be somewhat clearer now. And why did they end that contract, or why was their relationship with that company, BioSolutions, terminated? We're not really sure. Karen seemed to, to have kind of a theory about it. I don't know if, well, I just don't know. I believe the company was sold too, so that's what she indicated. Antigen use. Immune BioSolutions provided pre-tested antigens to stimulate antibodies in hens, not roosters. These produced 98% effective at neutralizing antibodies against COVID-19 and its variants, with ostrich antibodies outperforming chicken antibodies by 30 to 40%. Where have we heard the 98% effective before? And I don't know what that really means, because I know from having lived through the pandemic that when people make those kinds of claims, including scientists, it can be spun in a bunch of different ways. 98% effective. Give me more details. What does that mean? And what does that mean for human beings? Right now, I'm not sure it means much of anything, because they don't have any studies showing that any of the it just 98% effective for the bird. Like, it's a broad statement, a broad claim, and bold. Project termination. The contract with the farmer abruptly halted. As mentioned above, Immune BioSolutions retained some of the most effective antibodies. Japanese research, Japanese collaboration unrelated to Universal Ostrich Farm. Dr. Tsukamoto, a Japanese government funded, so that would be probably Japanese funding, Kyoto University president, tested COVID-19 antibody-infused mask liners in Japan. This was Sakamoto's own research with his own ostriches, as he has his own farm. He offered H5N1 antibodies to the Canadian government in 2025, receiving no response. Universal Ostrich Farm did not produce or sell masks, never said they did, and have no ties to the World Economic Forum. What, if any, affiliations that Dr. Tsukamoto may have with WEF is unknown to us and our farm. Well, his work is promoted on the WEF, as I've shown you, and I understand how you don't want to be connected to the WEF, and that's fine. The reality is you're working with that doctor on the research that is, and you're collaborating with him on exactly this stuff, the antibody research. And she talked about the masks in the interview. Didn't dispute it. I'm not saying the masks were produced by Universal Ostrich Farm, but they're working with this. Yeah, they're working with the guy. It's just an inconvenient truth. And a big deal. It's their masks. Some people want masks. Have at it. He sold over 1 million of them. I don't really care. It's just information. People flip out because they're triggered by the idea of masks, a lot of people. Personally, you want to wear a mask, go ahead. I'm not going to criticize you for it. A lot of people wear masks, especially over in Japan. But there's no research that shows that having these things infused with ostrich antibodies actually works. No proof of that yet, but that's a whole other discussion. And it's not really directly their fault. They're not the ones conducting the research directly. They're just participating in the production of antibodies. Just saying, okay? We're really starting to split hairs here for a narrative. Initial case on December 10th, 2024, a 3-year-old ostrich hen developed pneumonia-like symptoms, was treated and fully recovered. Outbreak from December 14th, 2024 to January 14th, 2025, 69 young, and I'm reading all this because I want to be thorough. I don't want to be accused of not providing all sides. 69 young breeders, male and female, mostly under 4 years old, lacking 2020 Pseudomonas immunity, died over 31 days. Sick birds were quarantined and many recovered with treatments. Distinction from HPA1, unlike high pathogenic avian influenza, HPA1, which is said to kill entire avian flocks in 24 hours. This event involved a new hybrid of low pathogenic and high pathogenic avian influenza confirmed by PCR testing done by CFIA in their internal and self-regulated labs. CFIA testing and call order. CFIA involvement following an anonymous tip. CFIA tested 2 carcasses on December 30th, 2024, with preliminary H5 results from an internal self-regulated CFIA Ministry of Agriculture lab in Abbotsford, BC. A call order was issued just 44 minutes later before N1 confirmation from the internal self-regulated CFIA lab was tested in Winnipeg on January 10th, 2025. No details of the testing, handling, and shipment of the test samples, chain of custody, have been disclosed upon request, and no independent third-party testing was completed or allowed. Testing restrictions, independent gold standard tissue testing, and any other testing of any kind was prohibited, with threats of $200,000 fines and or 6 months in jail for conducting our own tests. Only PCR testing was done by CFIA on 2 carcasses as per Health of Animals Act Section 66-B. Exemption and rejection. A rare genetics exemption was promised by CFIA officer in writing on January 2nd, 2025, but was rejected on January 10th, 2025, with reasons related to lack of time and resources. There was no opportunity given for the farm to provide appropriate documentation and evidence, legal actions, and court outcomes. Judicial review, April 15th to 16th, 2025, a federal court in Vancouver reviewed CFIA and farm evidence on May 13th. Justice Zinn upheld the CFIA's decision, limiting review to the January 10th cutoff, ignoring 4 months of no deaths and herd immunity. And there is a reason for that, which we may discuss following this. RDCK statement on May 15th, 2025, due to intense public pressure. The Regional District of Central Kootenay, RDCK, voted unanimously that CFIA test all healthy ostriches before considering the 400 healthy carcasses weighing 140,000 pounds proposed for disposal at the RDCK landfill near Castlegar, BC. Current status, higher courts upheld CFIA's narrow review, allowing a potential cull of 400 ostriches despite no ongoing health risks. Well, that's your assessment. That's your statement. You're saying there are no ongoing health risks. That's justified legal actions. A massively ignored aspect of this court-approved CFIA action is that the ostriches have 0 avian influenza deaths since January 15th, 2025. This is now over 4 months and counting. This important fact is not being considered with the order to cull still being pursued. Compensation and fines. And we've talked about how they can survive and be asymptomatic, and compensation and fines. Compensation uncertainty. CFIA lists up to $3,000 per poultry bird online as per a January 27th, 2025 news release, but no ostrich-specific value is defined. No compensation communication has been received as of May 20th, 2025, and $3,000 per bird is far below their true value. Well, of course, you're going to try to get as much as you can. The ongoing market value of an ostrich rooster is $7,500 Canadian each. Not sure about that. That's not what I found online, but that's what they're saying. They're in the industry. I'm not. The value of an antibody-producing hen is $93,000 Canadian each. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, aren't we? Compensation can be voided by CFIA as per below. To note, taxpayers pay for all culling processes and compensation to farmers. Yeah. Well, this is a claimed value. This is a self-appraisal of the birds. And as the government doesn't recognize their science, I would say that these numbers are open to question. Of course, they're going to come in with the highest numbers possible. They want as much compensation as they can get. I'm not criticizing. I totally get it. You got to go for as much as you can get. Compensation can be voided by CFIA as per below. Yeah, but they haven't said they would. To note, taxpayers pay for all calling. Yeah. Fines, 2 unjustified $10,000 fines. Well, they're saying they're unjustified. That's just a word you throw in when you don't agree or you're upset. 2 unjustified $10,000 fines threaten to eliminate any compensation. Both fines were challenged in documents filed to CFIA we are working to have these overturned. Yeah, they're fined $10,000 because they were accused and received the fines for not reporting the bird flu outbreak. That's what the $10,000 fines are for, as I understand it, in their documents online. Rebel News did a report on it, and they're saying it's unjustified. Well, you can have your own view on that. They're saying, and they've said that the reason that they didn't report it is they didn't realize it was bird flu. Commitment to transparency. Universal Ostrich Farms, Inc. remains dedicated to ethical farming, rigorous science, and public safety. Our antibody research has shown immense potential, yet we face significant challenges from regulatory overreach and misinformation. We call for fair science-based assessments and urge citizens to hold authorities accountable with the same scrutiny. And then they say, for further inquiries, contact the farm, and they give the website again. So that's what they've had to say. Now, in addition to that, I know that there's also this. Here it is here. This cuts to the meat of the matter with regard to the decision by Justice Zinn on the stay application and why the exemption was not granted. Here it is here. Yeah. There was some stuff posted on another social media account. I believe it was on X. Canuck Law they're referring to here. And this is a post shared, but the original post is from Jane Scarf, who is sort of not a lawyer. I don't even think she's a paralegal. She works with, does it stand for the? And one of these groups that sort of provides legal assistance. And they're also trying to defend the farm and cut through this assessment of the legal ruling that overturned, or just, they didn't overturn, they actually supported the CFIA position, allowing this call to go ahead. So smashing the Canuck Law smear on Universal Ostrich Farms. Once again, the Canuck Law author, and I don't know who this person is or who Canuck Law is, I did see the post. Best known for previously misinforming the public by claiming World Health Organization guidelines are binding regulations in Canada. Yeah, not necessarily. That's true. Is back with another wildly misleading hit piece. This time she's targeting Universal Ostrich Farms and the thousands of people defending it. The article misrepresents a federal court decision, smears a legitimate scientific project, and belittles a lawful resistance to government overreach. The government case was about due process, not so. I guess on the the court case was about due process, not fighting COVID. The Canuck Law author claims the federal court rejected the application because the farm was trying to fight COVID and protect its business. This is false. The legal application was grounded in basic due process rights. The CFIA acted without a valid warrant. No, what they did, they came in and they didn't do anything illegal. The birds showed no signs of illness. He had 69 dead birds. The testing was unverified and disputed. No, it was the gold standard. We discussed that last night. And even though it's a PCR test, it is valid. You have to do it correctly. And it's just the standard. And it's not just a nasal swab, it's sent off to a lab. And we discussed that last night. So that's not true, Jane. The CFI attempted to cull genetically unique, non-replaceable livestock without any independent veterinary review. If they're genetically unique, they're not genetically unique, really. Well, genetically unique, I guess, because they've gone through some selective breeding, but these birds come from Africa. And non-replaceable? No, they can be replaced. That's a claim. You're going to have to prove that to me. You're going to have to prove it, period. That's a statement, and that's a stretch. The farm was not whining. It was asserting its lawful right to challenge state-sanctioned destruction of private property based on flimsy, secretive public health claims. If that sounds familiar, it's because the same playbook was used during the pandemic to crush businesses and override constitutional protections. I would argue that due process was provided here. This is actually an inversion of what went on during the pandemic. That if anything, you're seeing a display of rights being respected through this process, because while the CFIA normally moves in and acts quickly, almost immediately, to affect calls like this, in this case, they provided due process to the farm owners, allowing for this whole thing to be delayed 5 months, which has, in reality, increased the level of risk to the public, to other farms, to wildlife, to other birds, because the cull did not take place in a timely fashion. The research was transparent, not cooperative, not corporate collusion. Transparent. Unlike Pfizer, Moderna, or other pharmaceutical giants that hide data, lock down contracts, and receive immunity from liability, Universal Ostrich Farms shared its research openly, cooperated with Canadian authorities, and developed low-cost antibodies that could threaten pharma profits. Did they cooperate with Canadian authorities? Are they cooperating with them now? Did they have proper permits to be conducting this research? Did they have a license? I haven't seen the license. I don't see any references to that. These are other questions that still I would like answers to. And, you know, they can come on the program if they want to answer those questions. To equate this grassroots transparent research with Big Pharma's coercive empire is not just intellectually dishonest, it's embarrassing. This isn't biotech collusion. It's open source immunology, and it's precisely the way people are defending the farm. I don't know if that is so open source, because Dr. Tsukamoto is using the work that he's doing to produce hair creams and face masks. That's what the work has produced. Those are the products that have come out of all of this. And public donations aren't a scam, they're a statement. $250,000. Where's the money going? How's it being used? Who gets it? Canuck Law tries to mock the farm's legal fundraiser. Yeah, it's legal. You can do a fundraiser for anything if you get people to give you money. Pointing out that tens of thousands have been raised. Yeah, not tens of thousands, like $250,000. I think it's up between all the websites. Now, I don't know. That's the other thing. You have these other organizations and other websites raising funds in the name of the farm. And is that money going back to the farm, or is that money going to individuals, other people? On the one site, it's up to $103,000. I think on the, what is the fundraiser up to on the main website tonight? Is it 100,000, 103,000? I think that's what it was. Yeah, $123,699. The Canuck Law author doesn't understand law or logic. Let's not forget this is the same person who once argued that I'm not going to sit here and get into what has happened in the past. I'm interested in this. And I don't know who this Canuck Law person is. Justice Zinn's ruling doesn't validate the call. It just shows how the courts have drifted from protecting property rights, informed consent, or common sense. If there's no cure for anything, it's for this kind of dishonesty. This is the thing. That court case was about whether the CFIA had the jurisdiction, the authority to proceed with the call, which it does, which it did, but it was challenged with a stay. Then it had to go to court. And so that is what the court case is focused on. The reason the court case doesn't focus on what the current state of the birds is because the question before the court is focused on did and does the CFIA have the authority to move ahead with a cull? Whether the birds are healthy or not is not a matter that the court is, in this case, that's not the question before the court. When you go to court for any matter, there's a question to be answered, something to be resolved. If you're accused of murder, you go to court and you're charged with murder and you deal with the murder accusation, like the murder charge. That's what you deal with. You don't deal with whether you had a speeding ticket. You deal with that matter. And you don't deal with something like unrelated on a different date. The court case was about did the CFIA have the authority on that date to move ahead with the call order? And if they did, then it confirms that they have the authority to move ahead. That is the only question really in this case that the court is charged with dealing with, not the other matters. That's why the judge is saying, well, you can talk about those things, but that's not anything that I'm really here to deal with today. That's not what the matter is before the court. It's just this matter of law, not a matter of this health over here. That's something that's dealt with in a different way through a different process. Indeed, that's maybe what Pat King's application for a stay and the additional legal filings that he had prepared pro bono for the farm. And there's discussion around that, and they can deal with that if they want to. But I think that's more in line with that kind of a legal challenge. What they were dealing with was simply this. Does the CFIA have the authority to deal with this? That's the question. You don't get to go into court and start raising all kinds of other issues related to other things, other aspects of the case, because the court had one question to answer. Does the CFIA have the authority? And it's an important question. It's really, in that case, the question. Because they were accusing through the stay application, however it was written by their lawyer, like the farm's lawyer at the time, the reason it was successful to get the stay to begin with was because they were challenging the CFIA's authority in order to get the delay. Now they have to go through other measures, I guess, to affect a long-term stay, but that's what it was. They challenged the CFIA's authority in order to get the stay. And as I interpret and when I see what has happened, that's the question the judge had to answer. They said, well, they didn't have the authority. They don't have the authority to deal with this. And so the judge had to answer the question in court. And the answer to the question, according to the judge, his ruling was, yes, they do. Now, next case. That's what the judge had to deal with. And it's an appropriate question. And it's an important answer that we got back because it does confirm the CFIA's authority to do this, which contradicts what Jane Scarf is saying there, that they moved in, they didn't have proper warrant, et cetera, et cetera. No, they did act properly, and the judge upheld their actions and confirmed that they do have the authority to move forward with a call. And they have the authority under law to deal with these matters in the way that they deal with them through these policies. You can agree with it or not agree with it. That's just, it's a legal matter. It's not a matter of assessing medical tests or this other data. For the public and for this PR information warfare narrative, this campaign that's out there, yeah, you're tugging at people's heartstrings. You're trying to have a protest out there, cast the government as this evil entity that's overreaching. And I get it. I understand, but that's not the question. And it's also, the protest is there just as the original stay order was it's happening because they're trying to undermine government authority, which is honestly putting a lot of people at risk. Because if the government loses its authority through a precedent-setting case, if an exception is made here, then every farmer across the country can then point to that case because of the way our legal system works, and they can say, look, a precedent, if you understand what a precedent is, it means that it's if the case is decided in a particular way, judges have to look at previous cases and say, what was the ruling on this? What was the penalty on this? What's the precedent? What's the common action that comes as a result of a ruling? So if you make an exception for this farm and allow them to just do whatever they want, we get to have testing. We want all of our birds tested. Then every other farm in the country can, if they get a bird flu outbreak and the CFIA shows up, then every farmer could just sit there and say, no, you know what? No, I don't want you testing my birds. I want an exemption. I want to let this thing run its course. And so in that regard, it's an important ruling because it preserves the power of the CFIA, the authority to move ahead, not just here, but on other farms in the future and move forward expeditiously, quickly, so that they can stamp things out, which is what's going on in all countries around the world. Canada is not unique in that regard. I'm tired of talking about it, frankly. The other thing is the way this is framed. It's like it's overreach and everybody's rights are being violated, or that the farmer's rights. No, on the contrary, the farm has been given due process. They have been given the opportunity to state their case, and their lawyer chose a particular route, which was to challenge the authority of the CFIA to move ahead with this. He was successful in getting the stay, which is a delay, in order to have a court hearing, but they lost in court. They won the stay to get the delay, but they ultimately lost the case as their lawyer put it forward. The farmer's rights and property rights protected through the process. Why? Because they were given an opportunity to take it to court. They did not just go in and say, no, you don't get a day in court. We're not even going to listen to you. In fact, they have listened to them. They did give them an opportunity to go to court and put their case forward. And it took quite a long time. This has been delayed 5 months. That shows that the government is respecting the rights of the farmer. This assertion, and I'm going to turn this on its head again, because the thinking on this is upside down with the protesters and a lot of people in the public, because they're trying to give the birds rights, animal rights, but the birds don't have rights. The farmers have rights. They have property rights. That's right. They own the birds. The birds are property. They're cattle. They're livestock. It's a flock. They're used for either food or they're lab animals. They don't get to say whether they get injected with something. The farm owner is not sitting there, going through a process of informed consent with every bird. before injecting them with this synthetic COVID antigen? Did they ask the birds if they wanted to do it? No. Why? Because they don't have rights. They're property. The farmer owns the bird. The bird doesn't have a choice. But the logic trying to be levied here in this legal matter is that no, we want every bird tested. That's because it's a concept that people have been implanted in their minds because the birds have been personified, humanized in people's minds, turned into cartoon characters, if you will, caricatures with names. They're being portrayed as pets, things to love. And they are living creatures. So we as a society do try to, we do extend humane treatment to animals. But farm animals are livestock. They don't have rights. The farmer doesn't have to ask before injecting a bird, before vaccinating a bird, before trimming its feathers, before putting it in a cage, before sending it to the slaughterhouse. It's a bird. But the farmer has rights and obligations to make sure that the animals are treated humanely, and so too does the CFIA have obligations to make sure that when the call proceeds, it's done in a humane way. They are not just contract killers. They will be veterinarians hired by the CFIA with a support team to come in and effect the call or do it whatever way they do it. And they're not Nazis for doing that. They're human beings doing a very difficult job, which maybe they don't even really necessarily want to do, but they're doing what ultimately has been decided is the right thing to do. But to say that every bird has to be tested would also set a precedent, which is dangerous. Because if you allow this to happen, where every single bird in this case has to be tested, then you have to extend that possibility or right, if you will, through legal precedent to every farmer. So you can go to a chicken operation that has 50,000 or 100,000 chickens in an operation. They get a bird flu outbreak, and that farmer or that company can say, no, we want every single chicken tested before we allow you to cull it. But that's not proper thinking, because the birds don't have the rights. The rights are property rights to the farmer. And the farmer's rights have been respected here because the court case took place. What you're really asking here, or demanding by demanding that every bird be tested, is that the property owner's rights be extended 400 times. So that you have to go through a test on every single bird, when in reality, the farmer's rights have already been respected and recognized through the court process, in the entire legal process, and through the process of compensation, where a market value of $3,000 per bird has been determined as being fair. That's they come up with those numbers based on what market conditions are out there. And they assess the value and they cap it at that, because that's the top end, as much as they're supposed to be worth on the open market. Now, I've looked online. I don't see numbers that support what the farm is saying here. They're claiming that their birds are special and unique. The government is taking a different view on that because they don't really believe, or they don't see the kind of science that they're conducting at the farm as being legitimate. And I'm not sure that it is or isn't. It doesn't fit into the kind of research that I would say you normally see at a university or a really secure biolab. It's not peer reviewed. That the publications where Dr. Tsukamoto's work is being published, some of them are in publications that I've found where you pay to have the stuff published. You can pay a fee and they'll publish any study you want to give it this legitimacy, because you need to get your stuff published. But I'm not seeing it in like really, you know, the most respected medical journals. But there was a lot of media attention surrounding some of this stuff. And during the pandemic, there was a lot of media attention surrounding a lot of these things. And there was a lot of government money flowing around too when the pandemic hit. It just opened the floodgates for a lot of research grants. And so a lot of people ran for those checks. All kinds of universities, research facilities, scientists, doctors, professors, farms. So that's partly what was going on here. And this is where we get to today. But to allow testing for every single bird, it's not practical, because these are farm operations. And if you start doing this here, and you start now having to test every single chicken, every single ostrich, every single duck, now you're getting into this, you know, area of like where our rights really extended. And then you could be disputing whether the PCR test or whatever test you conduct to come to a conclusion on a bird is valid or not. And you could be sitting there and fighting over this indefinitely. Millions and millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of chickens are slaughtered every single day. Ostriches today were slaughtered for people for food. Make no mistake. And you know, the other thing is, I learned this a long time ago covering media. People care more about animals than they do about humans when it comes to showing death. It's a sad thing. It truly is. Care more about those ostriches, frankly, than a lot of people care more about those ostriches than people in war zones tonight. Human beings. And it's because of the PR campaign, the publicity, the narrative that has generated a lot of money online. People care about what they see. They don't care so much about what they can't see, what they don't see. You know, you've got these birds running around in there, and they could be carrying bird flu. I can't say if they are or if they aren't. But they were. 69 of them died. Gives you pretty good indication that it was present. May well still be. And just because people aren't getting sick doesn't mean that it's not there. But you know, the thing is, it's about precedent. It's about maintaining order. It's when you're dealing with a public emergency, it isn't always okay to just let people do whatever they want. It's about limiting rights, but also making sure that people are compensated and made whole to the best of our ability as a society when somebody does suffer. And that's what the compensation is there for. Insurance, essentially, is what it is. Public insurance, government insurance, for which the farm has never had to pay a penny in any kind of premium other than through taxes like everybody else. We all contribute. But if the virus continues to linger, or if it, even just delaying this, how long was the virus present before it wasn't anymore? Were there other birds that became infected? The ducks came in and infected the flock, and then it wasn't reported right away, and it was present for a while, and then you've got all these dead birds, and then there was an anonymous report to the CFIA, as indicated by the statement tonight from the farm. Why did it have to be an anonymous tip? Why didn't the farm report it? Why an anonymous tip? And then they come in and they go, you've got bird flu. So during all that period of time, and then even after, as you got this delay, were any other ducks infected? Were there other animals infected? Do you care about them? Do we care about other animals that maybe became ill? Wildlife? Or do we just not care because we don't see them? So those birds, those other animals, they fly off and maybe they're sick and they're off in the wilderness someplace because this wasn't dealt with quickly. This is theoretical. I'm just trying to show you how people don't always think in broader terms and look at the larger picture. They get very focused on things when emotions are involved. People don't always think rationally. But think of the suffering of other animals in the wild who don't have anybody to take care of them. What kind of death do they suffer if they became ill? And where did those other ducks get the disease to begin with, if indeed it was a duck? That's a theory. That's not provable. We don't know where these animals picked up. We don't know where the truth is. We don't really know how these ostriches became ill. There's no proof. It's a thought, an idea. Probably those ducks flying overhead. That's probably how it got in here to our biolab. And if I'm just got to think about the bigger picture. How many other animals might have been infected, and how many, and because of the delay, how far might it have spread? How many other animals have died, might die because of that? I don't know. We don't know. It's not enough to just let people always just do whatever they want. I don't get to just pull out a gun and shoot somebody. I don't have the right to do that. There are a lot of things I don't have the right to do. I can't just go in my backyard at 3 o'clock in the morning, set up my stereo and start blaring, loud music on a Tuesday, waking up all my neighbors. Don't have the right to do that. I don't have the right to be cruel to animals. I don't have the right. The animal doesn't have any rights, but I don't have any rights to do that because we as a society limit my rights. I'm not allowed to be cruel to animals, nor are you. The people who work in abattoirs and slaughter animals every day so that we can eat, they're humans. They're not contract killers in the sense that they're murdering animals. And every one of those animals that went through an abattoir today in Canada and the United States, anywhere, they were healthy. That's the truth. And if you want peace, order, and good government, you want a society that actually functions properly, and you want a government that is able to respond to emergencies, you have to give them some authority. And there's some people out there who don't want the government to have any authority. And I guarantee you that the people standing up saying that this government shouldn't have any authority in this matter will be the first ones to complain when the government has no authority and is unable to respond. And they'll sit there and say, this government is ineffective. It's not worth keeping. It's not even a real government. Look, they can't do anything. They're incompetent. They're ineffective. Our laws aren't worth anything. Our country isn't even real. What's the point? It's all their fault that all these animals died because they didn't do anything. Yeah, they couldn't do anything because you set a precedent at the Universal Ostrich Farm that prevented them from doing anything, because now all these other farmers who want to do their own thing just do their own thing. You see? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. No good deed goes unpunished. This is about more than the birds. And this is a political action out there with this protest. It's a political action, these protesters. And what are they really saying? They're saying, screw the government. Screw these rules. Careful. Be very, very careful what you support. Be careful what you ask for. You might just get it. And I'll tell you right now, there's no freedom in chaos. There's no freedom in anarchy. And I think people are more important than birds. That's my opinion. And you can attack me and attack me all day and all night long if you want to. But it's still almost a free society. And just like you, I get to have my opinion too. Even though I'm sitting here laying out all the information for you tonight. And I hope you'll be back tomorrow night to join me again, when I'm sure this story and others will continue. But before I close off tonight, let me just check to see if anything is going on out there at that farm. Just in case. I doubt it very much. I don't think anything has happened out there tonight. No, RCMP was out there earlier today. They did something they called a wellness check. Red alert, but in the end, it was no big deal. I'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Yes, I will. Where's my song? Hang on just a second here. What do you want to hear tonight? How about we'll just let Cosmo take us out here tonight. Here he is. See ya. 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow on the flip side.
I heard old Cosmo howling last night up on the hill where the moon shines so bright. He was singing a tune, lonesome dogs cry about freedom, running and touching the sky. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. Cosmo's got them paws that just itch to roam. He's chasing his dreams, he's far from home. With a heart full of love and a spirit so free, he's living his life wild and carefree. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of the blur. Cosmo's on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes. Now the night's getting cold and the sky's turning gray, but Cosmo's still out there, he's miles away. He's not looking back, he's got his path to tread. With every step, he's leaving his bed. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. So if you're feeling lost, just think of Cosmo's run. Remember his spirit, his freedom, his fun. his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard a bird, a heart full of love and a spirit so free. He's living his life wild and carefree. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard a bird. Cosmo's on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.